Okay. Woo. Nice and hot after that photo shoot. So, I am here. First of all, this is my first podcast show ever. I originally had someone else planned, but they had to cancel. So now we're here with Jazmyn. So awesome for you to be here today. And it was awesome shooting. We had a shoot just a minute ago. We did some gels. I haven't shot a lot this year. This was the second shoot that I've done, the second session. And it was a blast. It was awesome working with someone who knows what they're doing.
Yes.
That's always fun. But yeah, so we're here. And I guess, I haven't even come up with a name for this thing yet. I think I'm going to call it like the Photo Loco podcast, just keep it simple.
I love it.
Yeah. So the whole idea for this series is to discuss and speak with people that are in the industry, people that are progressing, that have found success maybe in social media. I'm also going to be talking to people that run their own businesses, like photographers, makeup artists, and hairstylists, and all this, right? So, but for you, I came across you on Facebook. Mm-hmm. You started your own group, actually. And I think that's where I started kind of really noticing you and thought to myself, this girl's actually going after it. And like she's starting her own little group. And it's basically a group that seems to be aimed at pros in the industry.
Yes.
And it seems to be kind of a nationwide thing. It's not necessarily like a Texas thing, right? It's like you want, your intention is to kind of make this the nation for the nation. Yeah.
Nationwide, eventually international.
Yeah. And well, first of all, before we continue, what is your Instagram handle?
Yeah. My name is Jazmyn.
Yeah.
Instagram handle is Jazmyn Raymay.
Yeah.
And I've been modeling for, over 10 years. I believe I calculated it the other day at 12 years.
12 years?
Yeah. So
Okay.
ended up starting up that Facebook group just because there wasn't a place for professionals to really promote themselves and promote their events without getting pushback. And I'm like, finally, we need a place to connect. So
yeah, the intention is also like if I have an event, maybe like a get together, a social event that includes people in the industry, you wanted it to include that aspect as well.
Absolutely.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And then as far as your history as modeling, you said 12 years. Has it always been glamour and kind of boudoir inspired, or is it pretty much all around, or does that mean your main focus?
Now boudoir glamour is my main focus, but I started with just portrait, fashion, photography, and all that stuff. When I turned 18, I immediately ended up in boudoir.
Okay.
I actually worked for a lingerie company, and from there, it's an interesting story. I was a dancer.
Okay.
And I was teaching at a dance studio. The owner of the dance studio is a mother and a daughter. The mother owned a lingerie boutique on the side, but didn't tell the dance moms. Okay. So when the studio ended up shutting down the rec side, which I was teaching on, she was talking about how she needed a personal assistant. And I was like, what do they do? And I was like, I do all those things. And so she ended up hiring me on. I ended up modeling for the company, creative directing, and a bunch of other things. Nice. And that got me into boudoir.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And what I've seen is the range is pretty varied. I mean, anything from natural light. I mean, it's you work with pretty much any photographer as long as I'm certain, number one, they're worth their salt. That's number one, and then two, of course, you're a traveling model and you make money off of this, right?
Yes.
So that's something I'm always interested in because this can be a very challenging industry for getting off the ground and for people to even think how to get started with that kind of thing. So how did you get into traveling? How did you build this into something where you're making a sustained income and talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I was modeling specifically in Dallas, DFW for well over 8 or 9 years. And then my husband, he's actually in the military and he ended up in the National Guard, and that brought us down to Austin. And that's when I realized I need to expand my market. So it was a difficult time tapping into the Austin market. We ended up leaving and we were nomadic for 7 months of 2023. And that is when I officially started travel modeling.
When you say nomadic, does that literally mean that you didn't have a home and you were just kind of just traveling around?
Glamorously homeless. Yes. We put all of our stuff in a storage locker and we just bounced around, stayed in Airbnbs for about 2 weeks to a month or two at a time.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So traveled and shot everywhere we went.
And Yeah, that sounds like quite a journey. And it's kind of funny. I'm actually thinking of doing that myself. I own this place, but I actually want to rent it out. And I'm thinking of purchasing a travel trailer.
Yeah.
And just finding like a place to hang while I renovate this place out and then rent it out. But travel has always been an interesting, something very desirable for me. I don't really get a chance, or I haven't. I'm bad at taking vacations. I really just need to go and take vacations. But traveling is something that's on my bucket list to do more of.
Definitely need to
I've done it through weddings, but not to just travel and go experience, different places and locales and whatnot. And then it's kind of like I have the perfect tool to document the process, a camera. And so New York City is next on my bucket list. I went to Vegas recently.
Nice.
But New York City would always be nice to go check out. I've never been there. Atlantic City, and then even places abroad are always going to be something desirable,
Absolutely. Don't forget Colorado. Colorado's beautiful.
Actually, yeah, Colorado. Yep, that would be an amazing place. I have people, friends that are there, and they're always like, "When are you coming up?" And can you take a picture of my dog and this and that? I'm like, "Yeah, okay, it's got to get up there." So that's awesome. Now, this industry is interesting, and people have different takes. When you're a model starting out, a lot of the times they're just trying to get their portfolio built. And so you work with maybe photographers that are also trying to get their portfolio built. They're not necessarily the best. They're trying to learn. As the model, you're trying to learn as well. And there's some pitfalls with that. You get people that you work with, unfortunately, that aren't professional. I remember when I started, same thing. I would get models that I've literally been catfished before by models, where they send you photos of someone.
Yeah.
Like I had this one that sent me photos, and it must have been photos when she was like 20 years younger, and she showed up, and I'm like, okay. Wow. So that's happened. And then, there's other stories and horror stories that people have dealt with. Creepy photographers can be a thing, and that's something that as a male photographer, I have to try to combat but support at the same time, because there have been creeps out there.
Yep.
But I'm curious. You obviously have a lot of experience. Is there any difference to you now between working with a male photographer, and let's just put away the creepy part. Let's say you have a professional male and a professional female that's established. For you, is there any difference that you have found?
Not really. For me in particular, I actually started mostly shooting with male photographers. So I was working with photographers who shot with the Dallas Mavs, the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders, all of that sort of stuff, ESPN. And so I got really used to working with a male photographer.
Okay.
I find that the chemistry during the shoot can be a little bit different. A lot of times with female photographers, it's just like girls hanging out, and so it's all the giggles and all that stuff.
Right.
Male photographers, it generally is a little bit more of a professional flow, and the way that they create is different. So I find that the cadence of creation is very different from male to female.
Interesting. What in particular, like, what do you mean as far as like the turnaround, or is it the style overall that's different, or that you've noticed a difference between
style
male,
overall and how they shoot? So
Okay.
I find that a lot of the times with male photographers, they're a lot more particular about the lighting, the setup, the settings, all of that. So they're a lot more technical in a way.
Okay. Yeah.
While female photographers are a little bit more driven by the art and the expression. And so I've noticed that little bit of difference. There are, of course, still very technical female photographers.
Of course, yeah.
But that's generally what I find.
That's actually very interesting, because we were talking during the shoot, and psychology is something that I'm always interested in. And that's actually one of the core fundamental differences between men and women. Men are more interested in things, and women are more interested in people.
Yep.
So it would make sense, and relationships, and men are more into tinkering with stuff. And so that totally makes sense that you have observed that like men are more into the lighting and maybe the technical details, while the female in your eyes is more about the art. And I totally can see that. Yeah, that's really cool. As far as is there any tips? Okay, because we were talking about how to get started in this industry and what one can do possibly. and everyone's unique. Maybe your situation is so unique you just kind of fell into it. But is there any suggestions or insight you could give to someone who's starting out, a female model in particular, on how to start, what to look for, red flags maybe? Yeah, talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So this is actually something I talk about a lot whenever I'm mentoring other models. And I find that the very first thing you need to do is just try a photo shoot. A lot of times people love the idea of it. They love the glamour that comes with modeling. It's not as glamorous as it seems, but it's cool. So I always say, get in front of the camera first, see if you actually like it. See if you can actually feel comfortable with a lens pointed at you and somebody not really directing you. Then from there, build portfolios, jump into Facebook groups. I feel like Facebook groups are the one thing beginner models do not know about. Do some TFP, check out and study your photographers before you accept concepts. And then from there, always bring somebody with you, especially for your first few shoots. And I really strongly encourage for girls not to start in boudoir. I know it seems like it's so sexy, it's so fun and playful.
Yeah.
I always prefer for them to start with portrait, beauty, and fashion.
Right. Get the fundamentals down first and then move on to, when you're more comfortable, then maybe move on to boudoir, if that's something you want to pursue in the first place. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I find that a lot of times girls get desensitized and they will have a harder time figuring out whenever a photographer is not being professional, especially when you walk into some stranger's house and you get naked.
Right.
Or you put on lingerie.
Well, and the thing is like, it's like you said, I have it in my, I don't know if I sent you my model prep guide. I think that has the different ideas, or the different, photo shoot ideas and wardrobe ideas. But one of the things I put on there is, and it's a kind of an FAQ, it's presented as an FAQ. One of the questions is, can I bring a friend? And I'm like, absolutely. You're encouraged to bring anyone you want. The more cheerleading that they can give you and moral support, the better, as I always say. So I guess that's a really good lesson. Make sure that your photographer is going to be open to the idea of you bringing someone.
Absolutely.
It's not necessarily a red flag, but I would be very wary of that. You know what I mean? That's my suggestion. I don't know. How do you feel? Is that like a no right off the bat? If
it's a red flag.
It's for you. It's straight up a red flag.
Yep.
Okay.
If a photographer is like, do not bring anybody. I don't want any friends. Nothing like that. Or even if they don't allow the person who you're shooting with in the room, I think that that's a major red flag.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. Good to know. The whole idea here is to get kind of the female perspective and the model perspective. So that's something to definitely take into account, gentlemen. So, cool. Well, you're in town for the weekend. You came down for the shoot. I know you guys are probably just going to chill because you got a stacked card, young lady, in front of you. You said you got like 4 tomorrow and then or 3 tomorrow and then 1 on Sunday.
Yep.
So that's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And for the photographers out there, just let me kind of give my overall impression and experience with Jazmyn. A+. Not a lot of posing direction that I had to provide. You have kind of your set poses and you kind of fluidly moved from one pose to another without a lot of direction from me. Also, and you didn't mention anything about this, but what a lot of models find challenging about shooting in front of, just against a white background with no props, is you're just doing the same thing over and over again. And I have to tell some models it's going to feel very redundant. You're going to feel like, okay, what do I do next? Oh my God, that kind of thing. And that's completely normal. So that is one thing to overcome, I would say, to models, or at least that's advice I give. I go, this is something where you have to try to be creative and with just yourself. I've seen that a lot of models try to rely on props, and it's like you're not always going to have props, and you just have to move, and that's basically it.
Yep.
Do you have any insight with that, or any tips for models?
I would say the biggest thing is learning the model fundamentals. So there are specific techniques behind modeling, like creating triangles, creating shapes, elongating, all of that stuff. Yeah. And once you understand those basics, then you can really just fluidly move and just know, okay, let me make another shape. Let me make another one. How can I move my face now? And it's just that pattern of how to hold your cadence as you move throughout the posing.
Nice.
When you're operating without props, that is something that it's interesting. I find, again, that models do sometimes become reliant on props and things being around them. I did not model with a lot of props at first. And so I had to learn that your outfit can be a prop.
Yeah.
Your hair is a
Your
prop.
hair, your prop. Yeah, exactly.
And so you have to really just think about it as something abstract and kind of pull yourself from being on the set to looking at it from the photographer's point of view and what other things can I do.
Yeah. Good pointers. One other thing that's kind of unique about you, and maybe not unique, I've worked with petite models before, but you are a petite model. You consider yourself a petite model. It was kind of interesting. I wasn't aware of it until you mentioned it, because in your photos you have a large presence. I don't mean overweight presence. I just meant like a big personality, obviously beautiful, curvy, all of the above. But I thought also that you were tall. I thought you, for some reason, and maybe you were wearing high heels or whatever, maybe that's what it was, but I thought you were about 5'8", just coming from the shots. But we spoke earlier about that, and I said, one of the things we might talk about is just your experience as a petite model.
Yeah.
And you said you had maybe a lot to say about that.
I do.
I'm curious, what insight would you like to provide about that?
So I'm actually 4'11".
Yeah.
Which I get you were taller in your photos comment a lot.
Okay.
I honestly think it's just my proportions of my body that make me look taller in images.
Okay.
I will say that height really should not stop you. When I was actually scouted as a model, so I was modeling a little bit, but then I got officially scouted when I was in my junior year of high school. And I remember this lady, she called out to me. She's like, "Hey, do you want to become a model?" And I'm like, "I am this tall. I cannot do that."
Yeah,
and she's
right.
like, "It's called print."
Right.
And that changed my viewpoint on all of it. So it's something that you do have to be aware of. You do want to make sure that you're always elongating your body and you're always conscientious of what you're wearing and how you can work with your proportions. But really, I don't run into it often, except for sometimes whenever people want me to extend and lay with my shoulders on the edge of a couch and then my feet on a coffee table. I might be a little bit too short for that sometimes. But outside of that, it's not really that big of an issue.
Yeah, I was going to say, in my experience, there has been no issues. I get women of all models of all types and shapes and sizes, and I've worked with women and models that are smaller than you before, and yeah, it's great. And the thing is, you're right. Kind of growing up, I would imagine that females see Vogue or they see these runway models and they're like 6 foot, 5'9", 5'10", whatever. Yep. And you're like, okay, I guess I won't be able to do that. But the reality is there's so many different mediums now. Obviously, social media and the internet have changed things. And print. Yeah, exactly. You don't have to be 5'10" to be in print.
Exactly.
So, and there's different types of modeling, makeup, for example, fingers, even your hands, that kind of thing. Hair, beauty products, that kind of beauty modeling in general, beauty photography. So that's great. So the whole point is that if you're petite, so what? If you want to model, give it a shot.
Exactly. There's a spot for absolutely everybody in the modeling industry. And that's the thing is any physique, any body can be a model, but not everybody can be a model.
That's correct. Yeah, I agree.
Because it just comes down to the skill set. And every physique has obstacles that they have to overcome. Some girls, you may think they are the ideal model shape. They are quite slender. They're very lean. They're very tall. But sometimes they need to produce more curves. So they have to overcome that obstacle.
Right.
But people don't think about that.
Yeah,
So.
no, and I've dealt with that firsthand. I've dealt with very pretty people that don't know how to model, and I've dealt with amazing models that aren't necessarily characterized as pretty or attractive, that kind of thing, but were beautiful to me in other ways.
Exactly.
And they pushed through those boundaries on their own. I have found that quite a bit with a number of models. And to me, and that's what I look for when I look for a model. I look for excellence. I look for posing ability. I look, of course, for attractiveness, at least what I perceive as attractiveness, because that's different for everybody. But ultimately, what's paramount in my mind when I'm looking for a model is ability. And that comes through with the portfolio, which is, of course, why I was attracted to you as a model and a potential working partner.
Yeah.
Because your portfolio is awesome.
Thank you.
You're very expressive. That's one thing that photographers really hope for, is someone that can emote. Some of the best models that I've worked with are actually working on being actresses. So so the concept of modeling to them is almost like second nature, because they have practice, or they're learning how to emote, and they just have it. and then some people just don't. That's just the bottom line. So that having that it factor can be helpful. And that is not to say that if you don't think you have the it factor, you can't push through that boundary. I mean,
Exactly.
there's possibilities are endless. But the bottom line is, don't let your physique hold you back or your shape hold you back. There's always something that's out there for everybody, it sounds like. Yeah.
Absolutely. And
So-
expressions are a very difficult thing for a lot of people to learn. Since my background is in dance, I was a contemporary dancer, a classically trained dancer. So acting and showing expression with silence is something that we're trained in as dancers. And it's a necessary thing and a crucial thing as a model to be able to do what Tyra Banks says, smile with your eyes and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But as soon as you learn those techniques, it really transforms your portfolio.
That's awesome. Encouraging words. Well, Jazmyn, I think that's going to wrap it up. I think we covered kind of a lot of ground there in the short amount of time. Great pointers for models. Hopefully some insight that I shared for photographers as well, and for models too. And but again, people can find you online on IG. And is your handle pretty much the same on all different social media?
Yep. Every social media platform is going to be Jazmyn Ray May. So they're easy to find.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks, Jazmyn.
Thank you.
All right.